Hello, welcome to The Power of Our Stories, Wounds to Wisdom, Healing Through Veteran and First Responder Narratives, author Storytelling Night. We are a community where veterans, first responders, and all protectors can connect, share their experiences, and heal together. So tonight, I want to introduce Justin Wood. Justin is a former collegiate wrestler, spent 15 years serving his community as a firefighter paramedic in both Florida and Georgia. This profession has led Justin to become a peer support counselor for Next Rung, allowing him to help those struggling with the same issues he struggled with for many years. His passion for helping others brought him to 62 Romeo nonprofit, where he facilitates an innovative sleep program that helps veterans and first responders build a foundation for better mental health and ultimately better lives. None of this would be possible without his incredible wife and four amazing children who give him purpose every day. Justin's mantra, every day is a great day. So, Justin, I want to welcome you. We're excited to hear your story tonight. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Be honest, I'm getting emotional looking at this already. I wrote this, man. We got in contact. I wrote this right after I found out my dad was gonna pass away, and I haven't looked at it since. And it's a story about choices and where our choices kind of lead us. And before I read it, it's funny how life kind of leads us into learning more about ourselves and coincidences. There's on a plane last night getting my daughter from Minnesota, and we were watching a movie, probably seen it 7 times. There's a quote in the movie from 13 Hours, and it's called the quote is from Joseph Campbell, and it's all the gods, all the heavens, and all the hells are within you. And it kind of stuck with me for the first time. Like you hear it and you're like, man, that's a pretty good quote. I like that. Uh, and it really made you think. It made me think a lot. And essentially, it goes along with my story is that our choices will dictate the lives that we lead. So all the heavens and all the hells are within you. Our choices can either lead us to a life of positivity and be in our own personal heaven, or our choices are going to lead us to our own personal hells. And essentially, we are the gods that are controlling that by our choices. Um, and when you realize that you have that power, it can really change your life. And that's essentially what my story is about and how I came to that conclusion. And so yeah, I'll get started just kind of reading my story and I will likely get emotional. So the choices you make dictate the life that you lead. My dad said this to me for as long as I can remember, but I've never guessed the impact it would have on my life as I grew into the man that I am today. Each day we are presented with choices. Some are major, but most are trivial. Some people like me have had to choose whether or not living another day was an option. When I think about the road that led me to the moment I made that choice, I ask myself how I got there. It wasn't until later in my journey that I finally realized what the answer was. Growing up, I was an athlete, participating in sports year round, basketball, football, and baseball. My dad was a football coach. It was his niche. He was a college athlete as well, and an NFL kicker. I didn't know what sport it would be for me. I only knew that I wanted to follow in his footsteps and make him proud. My senior year in high school, I stood on the podium at the wrestling state championships with a scholarship to Minnesota State University in Mankato. I had never felt more accomplished or prouder of my achievements. I had no idea what I was going to study in college, I only knew I accomplished my goals. When I arrived at school, I struggled to fit in and was having difficulties keeping up with the team. Started skipping practice, drinking, using drugs, and stopped going to class. I got my girlfriend pregnant. I was 19 when I watched my dream slip away. I was released from the team and failed out of school. When I got home, my problems only worsened. I started partying rather than focus on being a dad, and I would go out almost every night and drink until I couldn't feel anything. I was numbing myself from the shame I felt for failing out of school, losing my scholarship, and being 19 with a kid. Then one day, my neighbor asked if I had ever thought about becoming a firefighter. The following week, I went to the station for a ride along, and it changed the course of my life. Found something that motivated me, and it wasn't the lights and sirens or the excitement of running into burning buildings. It was the feeling of being the person people called when they needed help. I felt like I had thrown my life away and was looked down upon because of it. This new path provided a way forward for me. It gave me purpose. I started the fire academy and graduated at the top of my class. Shortly after, I completed EMT school and began applying to fire departments all over Florida. While I tested and waited to be hired, I fell back into some old habits, which led to my girlfriend moving back to Minnesota with our daughter, and not long after I was hired. I moved and was living alone, feeling like I did when I started college. Some nights, thoughts of worthlessness and shame crept in, and the only way I could stop those thoughts was to go out. This often led to drinking and poor decisions. Started seeing a woman who became my wife and the mother of my youngest daughter. For a few years, things began to settle down. However, when I finished paramedic school, I started to struggle again. I was having trouble letting go of certain calls and feeling as if somehow I'd failed when the call went wrong. One month, I had several pediatric calls where several ended in tragedy. I became angry and took it out on everyone around me, including my wife and kids. I was soon given leave from work to see a therapist, and I was diagnosed with PTSD. But that is about the extent of what occurred. The therapist had a hard time understanding the first responder culture and the amount of trauma firefighters are exposed to. I returned to work after a few shifts, feeling like the world was watching me and no one could count on me because they thought I couldn't handle the job. I became disgruntled, angry, and unempathetic. Each time I tried to change, something would cause me to have an outburst, and people would say, "See, you can't change." So I embraced it, thinking it was just who I was. This attitude and behavior leaked into my personal life, which led to a divorce. I felt like a failure, and I was alone again. I hurt yet another person, and as a father, I now had two kids that I had failed. I went back to drinking and making poor decisions. My next relationship started out great, but quickly deteriorated. I started to crumble as I watched the world around me burn. I failed as a son, I failed as a husband, I failed as a father, and I had burned every bridge. And one day at work, already on thin ice, I got into an altercation with a lieutenant. The next shift, I was told to go to the chief's office. When I walked through the door, both the chief and the lieutenant were waiting. My chief told me that he was ready to fire me, but wanted to give me a chance to explain myself. After 10 minutes, I finally broke and told him I wasn't okay. My life was falling apart. The chief put me on leave and into our employee assistance program. I was placed with a new therapist who was better equipped for first responders as well as a counselor. After a couple of weeks, they cleared me to return to work, but I was expected to continue seeing both. Work got better, but my personal life was suffering. My relationship with my fiance was volatile. Eventually, the two worlds, personal and professional, began to spill over. One morning, after getting off shift, I was home alone with an empty bottle of liquor sitting on the edge of the bed with a gun in my hand. I closed my eyes and I placed the gun in my mouth. And I pulled the trigger and heard click, but nothing happened. My heart began to race, and then again, click, and then a third time, click. I opened my eyes, and I began to cry, and I heard someone say, "They need you." I looked down at the gun and saw that the next chamber, it held my life in it. I felt numb all over, unsure of what to do next. I knew that something needed to change. So I put the gun away and I called my friend for the first time, and I was honest about where I was and how I was feeling. After so many years of being in that dark place, however, I no longer knew the how or the why. My friend told me about a program in Ohio that could help me. I felt a sense of relief because there was a path forward, and I chose to take it. I was nervous to go and almost didn't get on the plane, but boarding the plane was one of the best decisions of my life. This program was an intensive week-long experience that I initially didn't think would work. We did a variety of activities and workshops, but there was a moment when it clicked. We did a ropes course, and part of that was climbing to the top of a telephone pole and taking a leap of faith. As I stood at the top of the pole with my eyes closed and arms stretched out, I asked, why can't I let go? Why can't I change? Why can't I get my life together? And again, I heard a voice in my head say, you can. After this, I kept hearing my dad's voice over and over. The choices we make dictate the lives we lead. On the final day of the program, we opened letters from our families, and in the stack was a letter from my dad, my mentor, my hero, my best friend. He wrote, the choices we make dictate the lives that we lead. And it hit me. I suddenly had the answer to why my life went the way it did and how it happened. It was me. It was the choices I made at critical moments throughout my life for so long. I believed things happened because of the actions of others, but instead it was how I chose to react. Well, this would have destroyed me, knowing I was the cause of my own self-destruction. It actually empowered me. I can't change what happened, but I can change where my life is going. This understanding led me to where I am today. And now I am now close with both my daughters and am married to an amazing woman who brought two sons into my life. The advice my dad gave me about choices when I was a child not only saved my life, but changed it forever. Give me a second. My dad passed away shortly after I wrote this, but he was able to read it. He often spoke about his legacy and how he hoped to touch the lives of many and change the lives of some. But his biggest legacy will always be his children. I hope by sharing his words with others, my dad's wisdom and legacy will continue to positively impact the world.
Justin, what a beautiful, beautiful story. And I think we definitely all remember, whew, we all have to catch our breath here, huh? Um, we all remember when you went through that, writing this story. Um, I really appreciate just you sharing your heart and your emotions and your
Sorry, guys. I didn't mean to cry as much as I did.
I think it's a beautiful part of it. And I thank you for that. I think you also appreciate you sharing your thought process and everything about your story. I think is going to really help people because people will recognize that. And you really shared it so beautifully and so deeply.
Well, I
And
appreciate that.
really want to thank you. I'm going to go ahead and shut off the recording. And for anybody who is listening, these stories, these conversations are very rich and they're very deep, and it's just not meant for recording. So I hope you'll come join us. You can reach out to the Power of Our Story and join our group for our virtual coffee and conversation. Thanks so much.